Hey y'all, let's install the TailGuard kit. Before we do that, I need to mention this, as this is a vulnerability to the TailGuard. The TailGuard blocks this hole. The TailGuard does not block this cover plate. So if you leave the number 8, 3/4 inch long T25 screws that are in here, 8 of them, Thieves will be able to easily get a hold of this. Because guess what else uses a T25? This wood screw. That's how prevalent they are. So replace these with some sort of security type fastener to mitigate that risk. All right, let's get to the TailGuard. So in every kit, you should get 2 brackets. They should be different. They should be the exactly same, but they should be mirror. One for the driver, one for the passenger. You should get 2 bolts, 2 bushings, 2 nuts, 2 small washers, and 2 large washers. Okay, so to get started, let's take off the tail light. To do that, you're going to want to remove, by the way, you're going to need a 3/4 inch socket and an 8mm wrench or socket. So use the 8mm wrench or socket to remove the top fastener and the bottom fastener from your tail light. And set those aside. Then you're going to need a plastic trim tool. You'll want to pull gently on the tail light and pull it away. It has a knob that fits through there, a little dowel, and you're going to want to use this trim tool to pop the bottom and pop the top off. There's 2 grommets, and it comes off just like that. Now, mine's been removed quite a few times, so my grommets are removing with these studs. And if you have that same problem, I've put the part numbers on my website, but they're also right here. Keep in mind, the lower and the upper are different. You can see how the opening is much wider here than it is here. So there's the lower part number. And the upper. Again, those are on my website. So, to install, take a bolt, feed it through, and put a bushing. These bushings may be a little bit tight. They're printed polycarbonate. They may be a little bit tight at first. Loosen them up a little bit, and then make sure they seat on the neck of that carriage bolt. Like that. Place it through the stock hole and push it into place. How tight this fits in there is going to depend on how thick your bed liner is. If you don't have a bed liner, it's going to be very loose, so keep that in mind. You might have to hold that or just let it rest. Go ahead and grab a large washer and a small washer. This large washer is meant to fit up in here and sit around the dimple, so it can sit flat up against that bedpost, the inside of the bedpost. So put that one on, put the small washer on, and put your nylock nut, or a lock washer and another nut on there. 3/4 inch, and go ahead and snug it up. You'll feel the bolt right here move, so you'll know when you start getting tight, it won't have as much movement. As you get it tight, you're going to want to make sure that this bottom nut, the bottom washer, you just heard it pop, you're going to want to make sure that seats around the dimple and not on the dimple. So as you tighten this up, move that around, check it every once in a while, make it sure it seats flat, and then go ahead and continue tightening. Once it gets to a certain point, this bracket is not going to want to move much. If you over tighten it like I just did, loosen it up just a little bit so that you have a little bit of play. Get it where it can stand up on its own just like this. But you want to have some movement forward and backwards because you'll need to be able to adjust it. There's the right amount of play. Once you get the bracket to a point where it can stand up on its own you want to have some movement. Move it all the way back and close your tailgate. After you close your tailgate, you're going to need to adjust your bracket. This is where that bushing came into play. You don't have a bunch of slop. You just simply push it forward and adjust the angle so that it sits nice and flush, seats up against your tailgate, restricting that access to that latch hole. Guys, if you don't have this rubber bumper, your tailgate's going to have some play in it. I would really recommend putting that rubber bumper back in. The part numbers are going to be on my website, so take a look at that. But for now, seat this up. It may have a little bit slight cant depending on the angle of your tailgate, if it's leaning out or if it's leaning in. Push that in, adjust it, get it nice and sitting up against the tailgate, and then go tighten it down. Once you get everything snugged up, make sure to get this good and tight. Okay? That's going to be critical because that's what's going to prevent the forward and backward movement. This tilting movement is going to be heavily restricted by this tab, but this forward and backward movement is going to be held in place by the friction. So get that bolt, get that nut good and tight. Once you do that, rinse and repeat on the other side.